Hello, Holliston. Welcome to Just Thinking. I'm John Cronin. This evening we're going to talk with Town Manager Frank Gervasio about the upcoming warrant for the annual town meeting to be held Monday, May 11th, 2026. Holliston, this is your chance to join town government and have a voice in some of the decisions that will be coming up next fiscal year. Joining me this evening is Frank Gervasio. Good evening, Frank. Great to see you. How are you?
I'm well. How are you doing? Thanks
Very well,
me.
thank you. Great. Well, that year went by fast.
It did.
Welcome back. So this evening we want to chat a little bit about the articles that are being put before the voters, the town meeting members, obviously this May 11th. How many articles are we talking about?
30.
30 articles, which is kind of standard for our town. This particular warrant has several high-end articles, which we'll touch on in a minute, but there have been some changes leading up to this point in time, which is roughly a week before town meeting. Do you want to fill people in on some of the developments relative to the building of this warrant? Absolutely.
So I think most notably, when we left town meeting in October of 2025, the town sort of came together and decided, we've had a lot of discussion about the DPW facility. Arch Street is our place. We don't want to go to Lowland Street. We don't want to go to Hopping Brook. We're done looking for private properties. Arch Street is going to be our best fit for a consolidated facility moving forward. A few days before the select board needed to make a decision on moving forward with a ballot question, which ultimately they did. We heard from our friends at Land Court, and apparently the Cross Street location is rearing its head out of that long process. Still a few steps to go, but upon learning that information, the select board, took some additional time to contemplate whether or not we should hit the pause on this project. And ultimately, I think we're going to take some additional time for due diligence, and as a result, that question was, that article was pulled from the warrant. There will be an accompanying ballot question. Unfortunately, by the time the decision was made, again, this was all sort of late-breaking developments. We were past sort of the legal time frame where we could have pulled the question from the ballot, but if for some reason it should pass, it will have absolutely no teeth whatsoever. It will be meaningless. But we'll be using the coming months not only to secure the property, but also to evaluate whether Cross Street truly is the dream site that we hope it to be.
So a little bit about Cross Street. I know a lot about it because that was the last item I did when I was on the board. Fill people in on what that project was and why has it been where it is for 3 years or so?
Sure. So there was a project initially approved there for a roughly $30 million project back in 2023, I believe. At the time, I think the town was under the impression that the site was coming out of Land Court imminently. The property, I think, has been mostly abandoned for the better part of 25 years. It was a site of a former chemical processing plant. I believe all the buildings were taken down sometime in 2015. If you're not familiar with the site, it's just off the rail trail at the intersection of Cross and Washington. And the Land Court process has been very lengthy, just to put it lightly. But there's also some complications with the site. As I mentioned, it was a formal chemical processing site. There was a great deal of contamination on the site, and so there is some due diligence that we'll need to do. The DEP and the EPA have been very supportive in the conversations that we've had with them. No outright commitments, but they really want to be partners with the town in getting this site out of Land Court because it has been a priority for them, for their respective state and federal agencies to get it cleaned up because it's been a problem for a while.
Notwithstanding the Land Court's delay or role in taking this time, and certainly the current select board's interest in additional locations, there was always something preferred about Cross Street. It's town-owned land, or will be. There's no acquisition cost, right?
Correct.
Eyes wide open that it does have some kind of subsurface hazardous conditions, which I think the town has an understanding of. But certainly as things go forward over the next several months, I'm sure the select board will have a look back at the value of that particular project, which is funded, right? That did receive an override.
It passed both at town meeting and at the ballot.
Okay, so you have money in the bank for Cross Street. The question is whether or not it's still the right project and whether or not, given the time and so-called cleanup that might be envisioned, align with the select board's hopes for a new facility. Is that fair to say?
Fair to say, yes.
Yeah. And it's been several years, and I do recall anytime you're talking these days about vertical construction, boy, are you chasing a market. You can't seem to put a number on inflation, either through contingency or otherwise, to figure out how much a project's going to cost in 3 years or so forth. And I look back, I'm sure the $30 million is now not quite enough, but that'll also probably be something the select board will focus on, is costing out whatever that project might be in current year terms. Accurate?
Very accurate. I think time is certainly not on our side as it relates to cost increases. But again, I think it was the right decision to take the extra time and really give this site some extra consideration given the recent developments.
So as a result, how many articles were pulled? Was it just the one that was associated with this?
Correct.
Okay, so we're back down to 30 now. But that's not to say it won't be a very exciting town meeting. Let's start with whether or not well, before we get into the consent agenda, let's talk a little bit about the warrant. I always called it a tool for the town meeting voter. They receive this when they come in. It's currently available, I presume, on the website?
It's available online. Everyone should have also received a little green postcard in the mailbox with a QR code and how to access the information as well. So
if you go to town meeting, you will be presented with a copy of this. Tell us a little bit about the tool. What does it do? What does it have? In addition to the articles, which we're going to talk about.
Yeah, so before you even get to the meat of it, which are the articles that every resident in attendance will be able to vote on, you learn a bit about the rules, the guardrails, about how things are approved, what number of those in attendance are needed to approve the articles that are voted on. You'll hear from the Finance Committee and the Select Board in their written remarks that are presented both in the warrant. You'll hear from them in person as well before the meeting really kicks off in earnest. But I think that those letters provide important context for why certain articles appear in the way that they do, what their consequences are, what a yes vote might mean, what a no vote might mean. And then you really get into the meat of the warrant, which are the articles that everyone in attendance will consider.
Well, up front, the moderator will likely introduce people to the meeting, but there are rules up front too, right?
Correct.
We've got the Robert Rules of Order.
Yes.
Which will help people understand how to move the question, reconsideration, the voting procedure. That's important because things do get a little hairy sometimes.
Yes, it does. And I think reading through those is always a good idea because there are some we are New England. We use some antiquated terms, and so when you hear things like "move the question," you might be like, what exactly is going on here?
That's right.
Always good to have the reference tool, as you put it, right in front and center here.
So as a voter starts to think about some of these articles, at the back of this handbook, listen to me, the warrant, tell us what voters can find.
Sure. So I think we always try to include as much context as possible so that when folks are voting on things like operating budgets, capital expenditures, road acceptances, I know we'll talk a little bit about the sewer district as well. We try to make sure that as much context and information is available in the printed warrant. We also try, acknowledging that we don't want to kill too many trees, we also try to provide additional materials online. And so again, if you go online to the town meeting website, find that QR code, that was on that postcard in your mailbox, we'll try and upload as much as possible to provide all that context. But we do the best we can to make all the information available in this packet so that if for some reason you showed up that night with no information whatsoever, you'd be able to make a decent decision voting yes or no, or not voting at all.
So you're going to find fund balances, you're going to find a line-by-line budget of the entire town
how it compares to prior years, previously appropriated capital funds, how those were expended, or if we're still for some reason holding on to them. Yeah, it's chock full of good stuff.
Great. Well, the tool is there for the voter. Let's jump into what the Select Board intends to do vis-a-vis something called a consent agenda. Tell folks what that is.
Sure. So the consent agenda, acknowledging that town meeting can be a little bit of a cumbersome process for good reason sometimes. I think at each town meeting, both the moderator and the Select Board and others will try to come up with a list of articles that could be sort of taken up in bulk, things that are non-controversial or somewhat routine. Some you could call them sort of like housekeeping matters. So for this year, we have Articles 5 and through Articles 7 through 15 that we plan to present as a consent agenda. Now, keep in mind, just because they'll be presented as a consent agenda doesn't mean that debate will be limited. If someone objects to something being approved as part of the consent agenda, they can always stand up and say that. And the town moderator could rule. I think there's a number of, I want to say it's 7 folks that are needed to object to the consent agenda item to be sort of pulled from that list. But at this point, we're looking at 10 or so consent agenda items, which will hopefully help move things along. We also, we want to be respectful of everyone's time.
Speaking of which, let's dive into the warrant articles to help folks familiarize themselves with what is on the docket for Monday, upcoming May 11th. So we have up front, as you said, the typical housekeeping articles. A non-consent agenda article is paying unpaid bills, about $12,000. There's one every year, right? This is housekeeping, but this is a specific amount.
Yes, so this is, unfortunately, as housekeeping and routine as this is, you cannot include an appropriation within the consent agenda, so we do have to call it out every year. In this case, the town of Medway provided us probably 2 times, or not 2 times, in the years 2024 and 2025. They basically supplemented our ambulance staffing services as we transitioned to ALS completely. The town being Medway in this case, implemented a new billing system for these services, and during that transition, a couple got lost in the mail, and so they sent them now, and them being
very common, actually.
Yeah. Being a fellow municipality, they understand that we can't just pay them outright.
That's right.
So hopefully this will pass without issue.
Article 8, nullify the vote on Article 5 from October 20th. This is a very interesting article. Talk a little bit about this.
Sure. So in October, at the fall town meeting, the Board of Assessors had requested that we release $100,000 in what's called their overlay, which is basically sort of a reserve that they keep. And we could talk forever about overlay, but suffice it to say, the request was made by the Board of Assessors. It was approved by town meeting in October, and the Department of Revenue, who sort of has oversight on these and other matters, came back to us and said, not so fast. We think that some of your uncollected balances are a bit high. I know we already talked a little bit about Cross Street, but for instance, the uncollected taxes on that property are upwards of $2 million. So they've advised us that they'd rather us not do that. So just to be safe, we are nullifying that vote.
Now that's part of the consent agenda, huh?
It is.
All right. Well, we'll see if folks want to have a further look at that. But moving on beyond the consent agenda, there's a fair amount of exemptions that'll be sponsored, I believe, by the Board of Assessors. We find ourselves at Article 16. Which is rather lengthy. Let's talk a little bit about this, because it does ask a petition of the general court to take some action, Frank.
Yes, so Articles 9 through 16 are all about exemptions and expanding upon existing exemptions that the town currently offers to seniors and veterans, increasing personal property tax exemptions. But 16 is a big one, as you mentioned, because we are requesting that the legislature allow us to do something that we're not allowed to do on our own. And so the idea here is to allow seniors of certain means and to be exempt from a portion of a tax increase related to a debt exclusion funded construction project. So whether it be a town building or a school building, the idea is to offset some of that tax impact that seniors who are already eligible for the means-tested tax exemption from that financial impact. I expect that the Board of Assessors actually might have an amendment brewing before we get to May. Okay. May 11th.
So this is a new article. They don't bring this forward every year.
They do not. Okay. No, this would be a new initiative. It mimics one actually that was implemented in Hopkinton recently, and obviously we share State Representative James Aruna DeRosa and the Senate President as well, who I suspect helped getting this through the legislature for Hopkinton. But the Board of Assessors, I expect, will be passing an amendment after further discussions with the Finance Committee about capping the amount of this exemption up to $500.
Okay. When you think about exemptions, as a former member of the Board of Assessors, it's one of those things that we wish more people knew about them. Mm-hmm. The folks that come to town meeting, I hope, get access to enough information to refresh their memory that if they know what the exemptions are, either they can take advantage of them or people that they know who may not be in attendance should. It's a benefit. It can flow to people who are eligible, and it does provide meaningful relief. So anything the Board of Assessors could do, or town meeting for that matter, I think would be time well served to really let people know we're pushing to find folks relief where they're eligible.
If I could, John, I'll just give a quick pitch for the revamp of our senior tax work-off program that we're going to be kicking off in July. We're really excited about it. It is an opportunity for relief, to use your words. So look for more information coming on that soon.
That's great, Frank. The budget, the FY27 budget, how much is it going up over last year, Frank?
Sure. So in total,
This is Article 17.
Article 17, in total, our expenditures are going up roughly 3.7%. Now that includes things like our capital set aside, some of the financial support that we'll be giving to HCAT, or that we'll be proposing to give to HCAT. I know we'll talk about that in a future article. Just a quick snapshot of some more granular detail. The school department, we're looking at a roughly $1.5 million increase, almost 3.39%. Town departments, $824,000, roughly 5.39%. I want to dive a little bit into that town number, the $124,000. Not a lot of new and exciting stuff necessarily, but commitments that the town has already made previously that helps us get to that $824,000. It's a big number.
Things like collective bargaining agreements.
Collective bargaining agreements, surely. But the town obviously is committed to transitioning to ALS ambulance services. We're almost there. In October of 2026, we'll sort of be at our final staffing benchmark that we need to meet. Part of that benchmark means that we need to increase our ambulance staffing by 15%. And so the price tag on that is roughly $188,000.
Bit of an offset for that expenditure with increased revenue?
Correct. So on the revenue side, very conservatively, we have an increased ambulance revenue of roughly $265,000 that we're looking at. Okay. Just for reference, I think a few years ago when ALS was not a factor, we were looking at ambulance revenues in the neighborhood of probably $400,000. For fiscal year 26, we're on track to be close to somewhere between $900,000 to $1 million. Right. So not a direct offset, but I think it's also really important to remember that it's not just about numbers, it's also about providing a service that is meaningful to our residents, and that the residents have spoken, it's what they wanted. Yep. In addition to that $188,000 for sort of the last step of implementing ALS, this is the first year of our that the financial impact will be felt for the transition to regional dispatch. So this also might have been when you were on the board. The town transitioned to a regional dispatch model out of Holbrook. The first 2 years of the assessment for our participation was funded via a grant, and for years 3 through 5 of our participation, that grant funding gradually goes away. So the first year is a 50% impact that the town feels, and that's $161,000. Next year, the town will foot 75% of the bill, and then in year 5, it'll go up to 100%. Got it. So that's a big chunk of that $824,000.
We'll move on to the next major budget item, which is the capital expenditure fund, Article 18 and 19, which is the budget associated with it. You want to take those together, Frank?
Yeah, sure. So we are able to put in a little bit over, or close to $1.9 million from the operating budget into the capital expenditure fund, and then we have some residual free cash from the October town meeting that we'll be putting in as well. So that goes right into Article 19. I'd just point out that while the high school feasibility study is funded by the capital expenditure fund, or is proposed to be, that is included in a separate article. So if you're looking for it, it's not here, but it is certainly later on in the warrant. So there's some pretty run-of-the-mill purchases, especially on the town side: trucks, ambulance equipment, a facilities upgrade for the police station. I'd like to give a special shout out to Robert Walker. You'll see on the second line item down a catch basin cleaner for a proposed price of $70,000. These things usually run, closer to the $400,000 range. We're actually picking up a used one off the town of Natick. Okay. We've already reached an agreement with them, subject to town meeting approval. Knowing that resources were limited, Robert really found a sort of a unique solution to the problem that we're having with our existing cleaner. It's something that we have to have. It's part of our stormwater permit. It's not really a luxury, but again, we're able to deliver something that we need for much, much less than we were originally expecting to spend.
Got it. Just square something for me. On Article 19, the total estimated cost of all the items you just talked about, including public works, the schools, and so forth, is $1.298 million, correct?
Correct.
Bring me to the comments below where at the October 2025 town meeting, $3.6 million was authorized to be spent from CapEx for the capital budget, compared to $960,000 proposed in this budget. What's the difference between the 960 and the 1.298?
That's a great question. So in addition to the items funded via the capital expenditure fund, you'll see the last two in there are funded by the water retained earnings account. So retained earning, or excuse me, the water enterprise is sort of its own. It's a town town entity, but it's sort of a separate accounting mechanism. So those will be funded from the water enterprise.
Separate source, right? Great. Now we get into some areas that are more general purpose. Articles 20, 21, 22, they kind of deal with a host of different issues. Do you want to take 20, which is 9 Green Street?
Sure. So I think, actually, I'm not sure which year. I think it was December of 2022. No, December of 2021. The town acquired 9 Green Street and is still dealing with some of the contamination issues related with that property in and around the downtown. Eventually, this will be something like we currently have at the Marshall Street site, where we have a site that has contamination, and we'll just be in the sort of the testing phase, where we sort of have this annual fee that will pay for someone to just test, keep an eye on it. Yes, exactly. But right now, we're still in a little bit of the remediation stage of things. But hopefully that comes to an end soon. Article 21 deals with a proposal to have a department head class and compensation study done for basically those what we call the M chart, which you can see on the pay scales.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
Well, in your experience, how often do you look at non-union salaries from a market comparative study?
So I feel like it's changed. I feel like the what you used to hear is that you do it once every 5 to 10 years. Yep. I think towns now, because the market has changed so much since probably around the COVID time, I think towns are doing them more frequently. There used to be a lot of grant money for these types of things too, and that money has dried up. So maybe that's causing it to slow down a little bit. The town actually did a similar study in 2022, but for non-managerial roles. If you've been to town meeting recently, there's obviously been a lot of discussion about department head salaries, and so we thought it best to basically replicate the process that was used for those non-managerial roles, excuse me, in 2022 for folks like mostly our department heads, some of our deputy department heads, sure, and others.
So you want to have an active compensation study done periodically, as you pointed out, to stay competitive. You want your people to be competitively paid, so that when they're here, they stay here, and that when the vacancy occurs, you can attract good, equitable talent. The plan here is that the select board will receive this plan. This doesn't call to fund anything. This is just to study what this new market of targeted salaries might look like, right?
Correct. So basically at this point, it'll be, hopefully we get to the fiscal 28 budget process, and we have this as a sort of a tool.
So in a year from now, folks can expect to hear any corresponding changes that might be in play as a result of the study,
right?
As voted upon by the select board.
Correct. And we've done some initial analysis between myself and our assistant town manager, HR director. But before we, propose anything formal, we thought it best to have sort of an independent third party carry out a similar analysis again, as we did in 2022.
And real quick, this particular study won't touch the schools.
It will not. It's only town staff, municipal side staff, on the managerial chart, and non-union, correct.
Okay, great, thanks, Frank. Article 21, which is near and dear here to HCAT, there's an article to fund $41,996 to HCAT. You want to touch on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So sometime a few months ago, with this conversation had started both with HCAT, the members of the select board, the finance committee, and others. And I think we've come up with a really good solution here, a solution that could, be basically we can build it into future budgets. It's no secret that HCAT's been trying to find new ways to make more money. I shouldn't say make more money, but find new revenue streams. And one of the things that we talked about was recognizing the services that HCAT provides to the town, airing select board meetings, other public meetings, school events, athletic events. Other
Public celebrations.
Yeah, the list goes on. And so to compensate them for that, we have come up with a funding model that I think, like I said, could be basically baked in for next year should the town decide to proceed with this. We'd basically come up with a vendor agreement like we would with any other vendor that provides services to the town. And the way that this is funded, it's through the operating budget. It comes from the tax levy, local receipts, things like that.
Yep.
And so if we get to fiscal 28 and this is approved, the funding's already there. It's already baked in already. And so we don't really put ourselves or HCAT in a tough situation going into next fiscal year.
The root cause here is that some years ago when HCAT was founded, it was founded basically on the back of the fees that ratepayers pay through their cable bill.
Right.
As people cut the cord to cable and go to streaming, there's less and less cable subscribers to pay into the pot, and so subsequently things are shrunk, and that's what's drawing this article to our attention. The market has shifted, so if people want to continue experiencing local quality produced shows that feature Holliston in all its forms, as you mentioned, I think this is an article they should have a really strong look at, because it's necessary, obviously, to carry forward the great services that are done here. So folks can have a vote on that. Next, CPC. So CPC, which is the Community Preservation Committee's organization that collects on behalf of the citizens in Holliston a certain fee that gets put into a fund. I believe there's a little over $4 million in there now, and the committee reviews applications throughout the year for eligible expenses against purpose areas that are defined within this particular law. Tell us a little bit about what CPC is looking to do this year.
Sure. So the big ticket item is the bike park over off Woodland Street. There's been a lot of community support for this project. I think a lot of folks are really, really excited, especially when you look at the stretch of sort of around that school campus, the lower schools campus from Washington down Linden, and then ultimately to Woodland. We have the Flag Street project that was also funded by CPC, or excuse me, not Flag Street, the Flag Field project redevelopment that was funded by CPC.
That's already done.
Previously funded, it will be under construction this summer.
Yeah, but it's not part of this item.
Correct. Yeah. Correct. And then further down the road now, if approved, we can have the bike park on the other side of Woodland there. So a lot of development in that part of town, thanks to the Community Preservation Committee. And like I said, I think there's a lot of excitement about this one in particular. It is a big ticket item, $650,000. It's not cheap, but I think a lot of people in the community are excited, and outside the community, frankly, are excited. Would be excited to have this there.
The article also appears to fund $260,000 for baseball and softball field upgrades. Which softball fields and baseball fields are they targeting? Do you know?
These are for the high school fields.
Okay. Moving on, the sewer district creation. I'll talk a little bit about this being on the sewer commission. As the sewer commission continues to evolve 1 year into our mission, one of the things that we discovered was that we're going to have to run sewer pipes across public ways and areas within the village district to make the loop of the eligible properties connect to the treatment plant. Council started looking at some of the pros and cons, the legal picture, if you will, of crossing public ways and whether or not it was necessary to get town meeting approval for such an action. Council ultimately determined that Chapter 40N of the Mass General Laws, which broadly gave the Sewer Commission its duties and has already been approved, needed a bit of a tweak, and that is to define the village commercial district, which is the area we're focusing on, as the area for the zoning into which the sewer commission will do its work. So by defining the district, we are now pulling in the authority that's given to us already by 40N. Pretty simple.
You've made it much more simple than I could have.
Well, yeah, I'm trying to keep it simple. Frankly, Monday night, if we make remarks, they'll be very brief. It's very, I don't want to say it's administrative, but it's an interesting factoid because there are a lot of interested eyes on this project, and what we've come to realize in our commission is those interested eyes are wondering, when am I getting sewers? They don't quite understand that there's only 72 parcels that are currently envisioned. It's a relatively small scale project. It may likely not be coming to your neighborhood anytime soon. But our hope is that by advancing the village commercial district, people start to really see the benefit of what a sewer district can do for economic growth and frankly helping some of the homeowners in that area recover from some very old septic systems in a Board of Health development way. So a lot of good things coming, but this step is necessary for us to begin planning the next stage of getting the pipes in the ground sometime in a year or so. I think we'll be talking about that. More on that later. But so 24 stands out there, and then 25 is really the big item left on the warrant now that we've pulled the DPW off. The high school construction project feasibility study. Talk about this, Frank.
Sure. So in December of last year, after, geez, you would know this part better than I, 7 or 8, 9 years of requesting or submitting applications, Holliston's high school project was accepted into the sort of this first step of the MSBA's construction or building construction process, and one of those initial steps is the commissioning of a feasibility study. So on the warrant for consideration for residents to vote on is a $2.5 million proposal. We've sort of cobbled together a few different funding sources to come up with that $2.5 million.
Where did the number come from?
The $2.5 million was taken from, I guess I wouldn't necessarily call them peers, but
comps.
Comps from other high school projects and some middle school projects in there. I think one of the I can talk about that in a minute about what the feasibility study will actually encompass. But in looking at some of those comps, I think the $2.5 million was arrived at.
Okay. But ultimately, it'll be what the market says. It'll have to be put out to bid, right?
Correct. It will be everything will be put out to bid. I think between the school committee, the finance committee, and the select board, we've all sort of come to this agreement, and the motion will reflect as much, I believe, that anything over the anything below the $2.5 million, any excess and any reimbursement will flow back into the capital expenditure fund.
So visit that for a minute. So, for example, if it came in at, I don't know, $2 million, $500,000 that was authorized, how will it get back into it? So it looks like it's pulling from 3 different sources. Capital expenditure fund, the HVAC roof unit reserve from Article 9 of the October 25th town meeting, and $350 from Article 19 of the May town meeting.
Also known as the DPW money that had been set aside to offset some of defray some of the costs that would increase the tax impact for the DPW facility project.
I see. So $500,000 came back. It would restore the DPW money and the rooftop money. That's theoretically the approach, or would it just go back in generally and have to be reappropriated?
The idea is to have it go back to the capital expenditure fund and then be reappropriated to
its original location. Correct. I see. Okay. What is the timeline associated with the feasibility study if it were to be funded, Frank?
Sure. So it's roughly 12 to 18 months, I think, in most cases. It's a very comprehensive process. I think we'll look at everything, or I shouldn't say we, the vendor that ultimately would be chosen. We'll look at everything from the location of the school. One thing that I think the school committee has discussed previously, maybe in the winter time of this winter of 2026, is the configuration of the school. Will additional grades be added to the high school? I think grade 8 I think has been discussed, and so all of those different types of things will be considered by the vendor. I anticipate there'll be a lot of public engagement on that topic.
Who owns the contract? The select board or the school committee?
The select board will technically own the contract. Once the school building committee is formed, all that work will sort of funnel through the school building committee. The school building committee charge was just agreed to by the select board and the school committee probably at their last meeting. And if anyone's interested in volunteering, they can actually go onto the town's website at this point and learn what seats might be available and what seat would be a good fit for their experience.
So the committee that you just talked about, which is currently forming, would have what kind of power do they have? Do they have the power to spend or direct or make decisions on the scope of the project?
Yes, so So the long and short of it is that the school building committee basically will oversee the project from this initial stage through construction through completion. The school building committee does have the ability to authorize payments to vendors and things like that. Yes.
So, simple question. Today we have a viable high school here. We're in it. It's some end of life, whatever. It's a school. If the new program came forward and this committee said we'd like to add, a new pool or a community library or a community center or something that is not directly educational, I'm aware that the school building at the state, the SBA, will not allow certain expenses to be incurred unless the town wanted to fund them 100% on their own, right?
Yes.
So who's going to call the balls and strikes on those types of community initiatives? How does that work?
So the school building committee will be leading all of the public engagement, as that you just referenced, to decide what's the appetite for the community. Are there things that the community wants that the MSBA might not front the bill for or reimburse us for? All of that would be squarely in the court of the school building committee.
So the committee determines, yes, we need a handball court. I'll just make it up, and it's going to cost $2 million, and there seems to be some community support for it. But it's that by then the feasibility study is completed, the scope is known, that handball court example, and the rest of the school project now comes to a total project cost number. Mm-hmm. And that has to be voted upon by the town, right? And the town, vis-a-vis an override, probably a year or two from now, will be looking at whether or not they want that scope, that may include that handball court or whatever it is, to be part of that number. There'll be public dialogue about that choice.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. I've been through this before. It was a while ago, but the recollection was that there's an awful lot of money in play here. And the SBA they've been through this, if not hundreds of times, definitely dozens of times. Communities all want the very best for their community, but there's always a price to pay. So that's where the rubber hits the road, and I'm sure the school building program or group will have their work cut out for them to try to balance what we can afford and what we want. That was a big issue 25 years ago, so we'll see where this takes us. But the feasibility study is really the beginning of it. This is a vendor-driven process, and that report you said is about 12 and a half months out, so we're talking late 2028, basically. Okay,
right.
Great.
And you can go on the MSBA's website, and they have basically the calendar that all participants and all that are invited in, all towns that are invited into the process, mm-hmm. all the different thresholds and timelines that are at play here that we need to comply with.
And the feasibility is really the state coming in with its resources, its vendor, and its rules to say, we've welcomed you to this program, but this is really the last stage. We want to find out if there's community support, if there is a funding path for what you're trying to do here. Simply having funded the feasibility doesn't get you the high school.
Correct.
That doesn't happen until after the feasibility is completed, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So there are.
And no matter what happens, the town still has to vote on it all, right? The whole kit and caboodle when it comes time for the project to actually be put forth to the voters.
Right. But for sure, this is a definitive step to fund something out of our pocket. This money, is there any reimbursement of this from the state, or is this 100% on the taxpayers of Holliston?
There is a reimbursement. I don't know off the top of my head the exact reimbursement rate. I think it actually tends to float. But there will be a reimbursement made back by the MSBA to the town for a portion of it. After
it's awarded, or?
So this is actually, excuse me, this is actually something that we've worked to clarify with the MSBA. I think they've recently changed a few of their processes, and our understanding at this point is that as soon as we start receiving bills from the vendor, mm-hmm. We can upload them to the MSBA system, and then within 30, 60 days, we'll actually receive the reimbursements from the MSBA. Okay. I think that's a change of practice from years past.
Right. This is Article 25. We're at the rear end of the warrant that evening. This will obviously dominate much of the discussion. I'm sure there'll be a presentation to the voters or the members of town meeting that night. Following 25, we're into a series of articles that include a road acceptance. Mm-hmm. animal control bylaw. There are two bylaws. Briefly talk about the animal control item. It's interesting, and if you're a dog lover, you'll understand it.
Yeah, sure. I would mention, before we get away from the high school feasibility study, I should have mentioned when we started that this year, well, I should start. In prior years, before the meeting really kicks off, you'll hear from the Select Board and the Finance Committee, typically the chairs of both committees. This year, because of the amount of not only school-related things on the warrant, specifically the feasibility study, but also the pending start date of a new superintendent, the school committee is actually going to be giving an update at the beginning of the meeting as well, which is hopefully an opportunity to discuss this more in depth. To talk a little bit about the two kennel bylaws. So we actually have two sets of bylaws that govern kennel practices in the town. We have our general bylaws and our zoning bylaws. Currently, those numbers conflict. In addition, there was recent state legislation, commonly referred to as Ollie's Law, that gives a legal definition for a private kennel at 5 dogs. So one part of our bylaws refer to a kennel as 4 dogs. Another part of our bylaws refer to a kennel as 6 dogs. So we're aligning the town bylaws to be 5, which also brings us into a compliance with state law as well. So a little bit of a housekeeping issue, but hopefully not too many questions raised or people.
And to be clear, Holliston doesn't have a kennel for animal control. This is for people who happen to have multiple dogs in their property.
Correct.
And running up against the inequity of the bylaw.
Correct, and I've actually been really surprised the amount of folks I've heard from who own 4 dogs and might technically be considered a kennel. So this grants them a little bit of relief as well.
Yeah. Let's wrap up, Frank. There are 2 articles on the back end sponsored by the Select Board relative to Jasper Hill, right up behind Town Hall. What's going on with 29 and 30?
So this is a property that is no stranger to town meeting, as you referenced. It sits right behind the parking lot of Town Hall. I believe there have been 2 separate developments proposed for the back of Town Hall and that parcel. Both of which have fallen through, have not been approved by the planning board. The parcel is now under new ownership. The new owner is in the process of, I think, rehabilitating the existing home. There may be an accessory dwelling unit or other plans. I don't want to speak for him, but suffice it to say, work is begun on the existing on the parcel. This is basically a repeat of an article that town meeting has seen before that would basically allow the select board to negotiate the terms of an easement that goes through Town Hall, the address technically being Jasper Hill, because Jasper Hill jets off Washington and sort of up by Cutler Heights. And so the select board it's required that select board have town meeting authorization before such a negotiation can begin. And so this basically just gives the select board the authority to begin that negotiation. No easement is actually being transferred. Nothing formal is being established. It's just sort of giving the select board the blessing to begin the talks.
I hope folks are patient enough to hang around for 29 and 30 at the back end of a relatively strong warrant. Hang in there, as they say. Our moderator, I'm sure, will be motivated to try and get this achieved in one night. In the event that's not the case, I'm sure we have a backup plan, and that would be the following night. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. We hope folks come out on May 11th, which is next Monday, at 7 p.m. here at the high school auditorium. We will be conducting our annual town meeting. Another one will be held in the fall. As you know, we do 2. This one has a number of important items, which I think Frank did a great job highlighting and giving some detail on. But most of all, we need you. So please plan on attending and participating. It's a wonderful form of government that has been given to us by many, many ancestors. So let's embrace it. It's what we have. Meanwhile, thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it. That's it for this particular episode of Just Thinking. We'll see you soon. Thank you.